is Cathy Gillis. I am the Distance Education Coordinator, and I'm here to show you how to deploy a test, as well as a survey and a timed test, formerly known as assessments. So first of all, we're going to get started by logging onto the computer. And this is, of course, in the new Blackboard. So in any given class that you have, you will be going into a content area. As always, when you're going into a content area, you build right from that page. You no longer have to, as in the old software, you no longer have to go to an assessments page, build the assessment, and then place it on the page. Now, in the new software, Blackboard 9, everything is just included right in the page. So let's say, for example, this is a current class that is has assignments already in it, and I'm the instructor of it. So in this case, I've put all of the weeks in learning modules in one folder on one page, and I'm going to create a mock test to show you how to do it. So for example, you'll see I have it set up in week 13, week 12, week 11, etc. But what we'll do here is we're going to create an assessment. So one quick definition. An assessment in the former WebCT software was always a timed test. Now in the Blackboard 9 feature, they're calling all of the timed tests. They're no longer saying they're assessments. So while you're going into create assessment on the green menu, you'll notice that under there, the only thing called assessment now is something called self and peer assessment, which is completely different than WebCT, which was a separate timed test area. So in order to create a test, timed or not, you simply scroll down. It's the first entry under create assessment, and you click on test. If you have created previous tests, you'll notice in the add a test box, they'll have all your previous exams if you've had those imported to a previous class, from a previous class, or one that you've created and you want to add to, or you're still working on, or whatever. In this particular shell, there are no previous tests. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create one. However, again, I could just add a test at that point I've already created. So for example's sake, I'm going to call this test 1. And sometimes you'll get that message. Just click on run. And as all the areas in Blackboard 9 have, yours have a description box where you can describe the test if you would like. I'm just going to put something small in there. And then there's also an instructions area, which is someplace where you can give precise instructions on when or how to take that test. So I'm not going to put anything in that box. But this creates the folder, let's say, for the test. Now I have created a test 1, and there's really no description or instructions, and right now it says that there are no questions and no points because I haven't actually built it yet. In order to do that, I can choose one of 3 different areas in the menu. I can choose create question if I'm doing this from scratch. I can choose a calculated formula depending on your area, jumbled sentence matching, multiple choice, and if you're an English professor like me, you're going to be using the paragraph answers or the long answer. In reuse questions, if you have already created tests and you want to reuse some questions that you've created, or question sets or question databases that you have in your class, you can find them here. And then finally, upload questions. If you happen to have questions already on your desktop, you can upload them here. So if you have a test from before, you have a digital file, perhaps you can upload it. I'm going to create a question, and I think I'm going to create some true-false questions, for example. Now, question title is not the actual question, to be clear. That is just usually number 1, or question 1, or whatever you want to call it. So it's best not to confuse students by putting more of what that question is about, as this is just in order they'll see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. So I'm just going to put number 1. And then again, you have the question text. You'll have a couple more boxes down here, but this is the same for whatever kind of question you're going to insert here. So under the question text, I'm going to say, are we in the floating classroom? I didn't mean to put it in all caps, but you get the idea. And since this is a true or false question that I'm creating, there's obviously only going to be one answer. Answer orientation just means how you want it to appear, either vertically or horizontally. And the answer I'm going to say is true. We are indeed filming this in the floating classroom with our beautiful outdoor view. And then if you would like, these boxes do not have to be filled in, but if you would like, you can provide feedback here to the student of why it's a true answer or why it's a false answer, or leave it blank. And then you can also include why the whatever choice is the incorrect answer. So it's a good way for students to reinforce what they're learning by seeing the reasons why their answer was correct or incorrect. Down here, some people, when you get more experience in Blackboard 9, you might want to make your test a little bit more complex in nature, such as using keywords, level of difficulty, for example, if you want the test to start out kind of slowly and build to a more challenging test. And then in section 6 is instructor notes. This is an area that the student does not see. So be very clear on the notes are primarily for your own use. Whatever you might need to put in here as a note to remind yourself about this test or the students taking the test or whatever. Maybe you want to put the answers in there, or if you're a little leery about that, don't do that, but they don't get to see this box. And once you're done choosing or filling in whatever you'd like, you click Submit again. And you can see now I've created the one question, even though it's in weird all caps there, but you can see that the answer shows that it's true. The student will not see that while they're taking the test. That's for your building purposes. You can see what you've already created. And now that's just one question. And I want you also to notice that the total points default for every question, regardless of type, is 10 points. So I'm going to show you how to go back in there and change that, because obviously you won't want to have all your answers be default 10 points. Then you can again change the question type. You can add more questions. I'll add one more question just to give us a little bit more of a example. So I'm going to say fill in the blank. And we'll get 2 questions under our belt so we can see what they look like. So logically, again, I'm going to call this question 2. And in the question text, since it's now a fill in the blank, which is very useful for some areas, I will say we are in, oh, I did it again. We are in the, and that's going to be for floating, classroom. And the student, obviously this wouldn't be a real question, but I want to say that the question, there could be multiple answers, by the way, for fill-ins. You might have a long sentence or a paragraph where they have multiple fill-ins, so you can toggle that by going to number 2 and putting however many fill in the blanks. Maybe it's a whole paragraph you want to have them fill in the blanks. But in this case, I'm going to put the answer as floating. That was the fill in the blank. Once again, in number 3, you have feedback you can give to the student if you choose for both correct and incorrect answers. Instructor notes again, and then click Submit. Now you'll see we have 2 questions created in our test so far. Again, both default 10 points each. So now we want to go and we want to change maybe the default points. We want to change something else about this test. So all you do to do that is you can do it through the edit function up here in the title, but in this case we want to look at the question settings. So it's over here, slightly kind of darkened or faded, kind of not out of the way, so you might not see it. This is really where you need to make sure you have the settings the way you want them, because it's very important whether how long it's timed, if there's going to be a clock visible, etc. So under test question settings, if you want to provide feedback, you'll want to check that box. In 2, let's say you're an art professor and they're going to be commenting or being tested on a piece of artwork. You might want to have them view that, or a film, or whatever it may be. And the beauty of this system is that you can select to add images, files, and external links to questions, so that you can really enhance your tests quite a bit by having them go far and afield for information or see things visually. Then you'll see in number 4, you don't have to have those. In number 3, you don't have to have those categories unless you want them, so you can uncheck that, but by default it will always be checked. And let's say we want to change our default points to 5. So that's kind of what my final looks like. Most of the questions are worth 5 points. So I'm going to change that to 5. And then it says use the currently assigned points when finding and adding questions, so it'll always remember the next ones that I create will be 5, 5, 5. Unless I click on the next one, which says use default points when finding and adding questions. So it doesn't matter whichever ones. One important feature in the new time test feature, whether it's timed or not I should say, is the specify partial credit for answers. And that's a really nice feature, especially if a student answers a question partially correct and you don't want to give them a 0 on that. It's already by default checked, so you have that option. You can provide option to assign assign questions as extra credit, which I like to do on my final. I'll have a final like a extra credit sort of thoughtful question for them. And then you can choose how to display your questions. But for me, I just wanted to change it to 5 points. So now I see that I have total of 2 questions, total of 20 points, it still says, which is weird. It should say 5. Maybe I didn't actually change those. In any case, that's the question settings. But the test at this point will not be ready for students to take. And so the next step in this is to deploy the test. So when I go to course, over here to the course management section that only instructors see, I'm going to want to click on evaluation, not evaluation, I'm sorry. Course tools, yeah, course tools. And under course tools in the control panel portion of that, you're going to see tests, surveys, and pools. And now you'll see the one that I created when I click on tests is in there. So I have test 1, and most importantly in this screen it tells me that it has not been deployed. So again, if you don't actually do the final step for your test and deploy it, it will not be available to students. So I'm going to go into this edit, export, copy, delete menu, and I'm going to click on edit. I just want to show you that it'll take you right back to this area in case you need to change anything. And you can even update the points on this screen as well.